Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday show. I was going to say Monday show because we normally do this on a Monday, but as you may have noticed, I've been away for a few days, and so we're just getting back into the way of things. So we are putting this one out to all the usual platforms. So we're out on Facebook, YouTube, X, Getter, blah blah blah. We're all the usual places. So first of all, a warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for coming along on this Tuesday evening. Now, the reason that we didn't have a show last night was because I was traveling back from Paris, where I'd been for the weekend, and it was an interesting experience. I can tell you, I'll probably write and talk a wee bit more about it, but all I can say is that I'll tell you something. Um, Paris may have its problems, but it's not as bad as London. It's not as bad as London. So there's a worrying thought for you. And I have to say that I found it surprising, pleasantly surprising, what I discovered there. I can also confirm that the temperature in the Stade de France on Saturday night was like Baltic. It was extraordinarily cold. I went to see the rugby game of France versus Australia as a non-aligned viewer, but I just enjoy good rugby, and it was a great game actually. Very good. Yeah, we that's where I've been. So if you're wondering where's all the podcasts, where's all the other stuff that he puts out, the answer is it all returns tomorrow morning. So check that out. In the meantime, of course, whilst I haven't been here, life continues to go on. I'm sure you saw that the British media have decided that what you say when you are at school it determines your ability to become a political leader. Hi, Alan. Thanks very much for the comment. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the rugby enormously. Yeah, apparently Nigel Farage said something that hurt somebody's feelings when he was in school, and the left-wing biased media are all over it here in the UK. Did you see that? So yeah, I saw that. And then tomorrow, of course, is budget day here in the UK. That's when Rachel Reeves and all her socialist thieves have. I see we're having a problem, Jed. To one of the streams, I think Getter saying it's not something wrong with it. Rachel Reeves is going to steal all your money tomorrow, so look forward to that. And above and beyond that, there's lots of chat between Ukraine and Russia and the US. All that stuff's going on, and I'll cover that in due course. But the thing is that another big topic, which I think fascinates me, is another thing that's happening across in the States. Now, we've got a very special guest. He's sitting there very patiently in the background as I get things together here. And he was back. He was on. We did a show together. Gosh, over 2022. God, 3 years ago. Where does time go when you're having fun? And we did a show then together on the whole dangers of woke culture, and it is quite prophetic in terms of what he was saying, because you've all seen the news that New York, which is probably the number one global city, or if not very close to it, has elected itself someone who calls themselves a social democrat in the form of Zoran Mamdani. Now, my view on him is he's nothing of the sort. I think he's a communist, but maybe even worse than that, maybe. So, but anyway, got in, very popular with those who voted in the New York electorate. We need to talk about that as well. But the question is, what does this mean for America? Because if it's going to go around electing these social democrats, is that going to be the direction of the Democrat Party? What will that mean in the midterms and in 2028? Could we have a socialist Democrat president? God forbid. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know the answers, but our guest does. So listen, I'm delighted to bring him back again. You may remember a few years back. His name is Mike Zhao. So let's bring him in. Hi, Mike.
Hi, David.
Yeah, yes, great to have you back, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. I mean, because the stuff that you and I talked about a couple of years ago, about, the wokeness and how that impacts into culture. It's gotten worse in some regards, certainly in New York, because we've got this guy Zoran Mamdani, who's the mayor-elect of such a major global city, Mike, and he's achieved that by making promises which are very, very disturbing to me, because he's promising free stuff, free this, free that, free the other. And it seems to be very popular with some Americans. So, first of all, your reaction to him getting elected?
Yeah, I want to tell you, I watched in horror as Zoran Mandani got elected in the capital of the free world. I call New York City as the capital of free world, right?
Yeah.
What he did, as you said, just promised a lot of communist stuff, which has been proven, failed in China, in former Soviet Union, in Cuba, in North Korea. So I was shocked. So, I want to also share with your audience, 70% of voters aged between 18 to 44, 70 voted for him.
Yeah.
Among them, 50, but the others, so anybody older than 45, only 40% voted for him, right? 70 versus the 40. Means what? Means that, most of them are born after Cold War, right? Mm-hmm. So he's really support on board from Cold War. And also, 55% in New York with a college degree voted for him, 55 percentage versus like 42 without a college degree. Yeah. Which means what? Means America may have won the Cold War against the former Soviet Union, but we may lose the ideological war at home. That is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, well, exactly, Mike, because the thing that so concerns me is that this guy, his whole platform, which you've described, seems to be one that the Democrat Party more generally seems to be swinging towards. Now, I know not all parts of America look like New York. New York is very much its own thing, but it was widely popular with people. If I understand the demographics of the vote, native-born New Yorkers did not vote for him. And a majority of them did not vote for him. Those who have arrived in New York in the past 15 years, the majority of them voted for him. So do you think immigration is a factor in what we've seen in New York, Mike?
I believe so, especially, some people basically being attracted by the welfare system over there, right? Mm. Also, a lot of illegal immigrants, and they're sympathizers. I don't have data say illegal immigrants involved in the voting, but they're sympathizers, right? So yes, but I also want to point it out, many Chinese Americans who really suffer from communist rules are opposing him. Yeah. But unfortunately, there are also many Asians who voted for him. It's unfortunately, some people are very short-sighted, try to take advantage of a welfare system there.
Yeah,
because he offered a lot of things free, Well,
Mike, because we talked about this the last time we were together. Your family fled communist China. They fled the tyranny that communism brings. So it must be very disturbing for you to be in the United States and to see this start to happen, first of all, in New York. It may well happen in other places as well. So, how do you feel about that when you see this kind of populist communism embraced by those voters?
I was so disappointed. What happening in New York reminded me, the poor, the suffering, the poverty I experienced in China, right? Mm. For example, Mamdani claimed They want to control the housing, government to control the housing. You know what? When I was young, the government control the housing, give each urban citizen like a small apartment to live. My family had 5 family members. We live in only like 200 square feet. That kind of small, like only 16 square meter. That kind of small apartment, no tap water, no like bathroom, right? That poverty condition. And also he said he want to, run the like a public like grocery. I experienced that, right? When Chairman Mao was running the public grocery, everything was in shortage. Everything was rationed. Urban citizens in that time, when I was a toddler or a teenager, basically, each urban citizen only get 1 kilo, almost 2 pound, a little bit more than 2 pound of meat for whole month. I had to get up in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, waiting in the queue for many hours before I can buy anything, right? Buy some meat, right? So that kind of is suffering. So I was shocked. I was so, disappointed. So many young Americans, believed his like empty promise.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, for example, on the grocery stores. I mean, you mentioned what it was like in China. It was the same in Russia as well. When the Russian state tried to run food stores, it doesn't work. But I mean, how could this even possibly be? How could it work in New York, Mike? How can you get these grocery stores with like what? With they're going to control the prices? Is that how he's going to do it? How does it work?
This is totally like a pie in the sky, okay? He threw a pie in the sky, okay? I have business leadership experience when I used to work at Siemens Energy.
Yeah.
But I knew a little bit of basics. In terms of grocery retail industry has very small profit margin, right?
Yeah.
They're faced with a very strong competition. So, so-called like, price gouging or other things, actually all was really the communist or socialist, propaganda. There's no way people can make huge money in the grocery. Otherwise, everybody already, as successful as Walmart, right?
Yeah.
But like even Walmart cannot lower the price further. How can Mamdani do that? It's totally impossible. He cannot get a saving cost through logistics. He was claiming that he get a wholesale price and selling at a wholesale. So if that is the case, who pay for the real estate? Who pay for the store? Nobody. Who pay for the staff? Really, the people who who pays operation costs, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to somebody else, which end of the day will be taxpayer to pay that. But you know what? If he really did that, he really do that. Yeah. He really does that, and then he will drive other retailer out of the business, and then he will become monopoly, and then the monopoly what happen will cause shortages, right? The government state ownership will always cause shortages. It will be disaster.
Well, I know myself. I've experience in the grocery industry, and I know that the retailers operate on single-digit margins, so very small margins, like you say. So the notion that you can operate on wholesale, it's just insane. But then, I mean, he's also going to give free travel, isn't he? All New Yorkers, you're going to get free. How's that going to work? Free travel.
A free bus, right? And also so subways. How can you do that? If anything give free, people will not really take care of that. I had one experience, during the immediately after China's Cultural Revolution. At that time, China still state-owned pharmacies, right?
Yeah.
And then it was abused. My sister used to work at a pharmacy. She told me that some people want to take advantage of that. Even like to have like a good friend, the doctor, give a prescription, but not for the medicine, but simply for the package of medicine. It happened, that was around 1978 or between 1980, right? Because if you give people free, people will not really pay anything. They will not really care about take care of that. So free is not a good idea. So a huge operating cost, for the bus, for subway. End of the day, taxpayer will pay that. And he had,
yeah.
He has also another scheme. He was saying, tax the billionaires. So many people already escaped New York. I live in Orlando, Florida, and I knew the real estate price growing, the rent growing in Orlando. Why? Because so many people migrate from escape New York. So the New York will end up with losing the tax base and will be on decline. That is something I don't want to see.
Yeah, but that's absolutely right. That if you raise the taxes on businesses in New York, you will have fewer businesses in New York because all business people understand that if that cost becomes prohibitive, then you move elsewhere. So does Mamdani, does he not see that, or does he not care? Which is it?
I you know I believe he is also like, but he was born in Uganda, right?
Uganda, yep.
My speculation is he never appreciate how the capitalist society, how the free world really help lifting up many poor people like myself. When I came to America, I brought less than $200 in my pocket, right? That's how I started. How provide opportunity for all the working classes, right? He never appreciated the great impact of free market system. So he is kind of being indoctrinated. Maybe somehow he believed, the communist propaganda is true. Maybe, and I don't think he really fully appreciate how the like productivity is being improved, how the wealth being created in the capitalist society, in the free world, how we help the poor people actually more effectively than any other other political system.
Yeah, you're right. As someone says here, Mike, only capitalism lifts people out of poverty. Nobody escapes into communism. You don't escape into communism. You escape from communism. They didn't move from West Berlin into East Berlin. It was the other way around. But I mean, so the problem I have is that, I mean, the young people that vote for him, Mike, these are these kids that have been through university education, and they're very woke and hypersensitive because of that. Is that part of the problem as well? That US education, a bit like you said a couple of years ago, is turning these people into woke robots who then think that Mamdani is credible, because he's not.
That's exactly right. Actually, it's very unfortunate. In the last decades or so, America launched critical race theory education colleges. I think in my book, like last time we talked about critical race theory and woke culture, America's dangerous repeat of Chinese Cultural Revolution.
Yep.
Almost 70% or more colleges actually somehow teaching critical race theory. What is critical race theory? Critical race theory is Karl Marx's class struggle theory 2.0. Karl Marx's class struggle theory says, the oppressors, capitalists, as he called oppressors, exploit the oppressed, which workers, right? But in critical race theory, claim the white people as oppressors, somehow persecuted, or discriminate against like people of color even today. Historically, there's, like a slavery system that was true, but claim even today, right? So this kind of like oppressors versus the oppressed, this kind of like hatred education really indoctrinate tens of millions, I believe, young people in America.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And that's what worries me, because whilst Mamdani may be in New York, if you go to places like California, and there's many other places as well, Minneapolis, wherever, you see the same problem. This generation of young woke people who Mike, they don't seem to have any common sense. They seem to believe something that you understood and you experienced, that nothing is for free in this world. Nothing is for free at all costs. And yet they're voting for people that are telling them it's for free.
Unfortunately, that's true. And I also want to mention one of my heroes, Charlie Kirk, right?
Yep.
He actually did a great job in terms of reversing this trend, right? He went to many colleges, answered the questions to the young Americans, and then try to explain how the capitalist society works, right? Yeah. But, the example we found in New York City, I think we need more Charlie Kirk, more like this kind of dialogue. One very important thing is during the Cold War, right? And at that time, our media and also our like colleges still, to a certain degree, truthfully portray how bad, how evil the communism is, right? But after the Cold War, they no longer do that. They pretty much become critical against the capitalist society, critical of our free world, instead of be critical, against the communism. So many atrocities, many tragedies happen in the former Soviet Union, in communist China under dictator Chairman Mao. Many of them are no longer in our textbook, no longer being taught, right? So especially to young students, that's the reason that's a very dangerous trend.
Yeah. No, it's historical revisionism, through academia. I get that. I wondered what did you think of the fact that Mamdani met with President Trump a couple of days ago, and they had that, and I was quite surprised. It seemed to be quite a friendly meeting, and I noticed that then Mamdani did say he thinks that Trump is a fascist. And what do you make of the way President Trump has responded to the election of Mamdani in New York?
I think President Trump, before the election, he used his Truth Social. I think he was correct. Point out, Mamdani is a communist. Today I still believe that. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And but I think Mamdani is a little bit manipulative, right? He'll try to get some eyeballs, visibilities by meeting with President Trump, right? But I guess, from my reading, President Trump maybe agree with him on how to lower the price. But President Trump using different approach. President Trump wants to do what? They wanted to really lower the energy price through the deregulation, through really the capital conservative way to achieve that, right? I would never believe, President Trump agree with Mamdani, say you have, state-owned grocery or give people things free. No, I don't think so. But I think, what President Trump in that meeting was trying to communicate with the American people. He cares about affordability, right, of
Yeah.
American citizens. That's the only reason he met Mamdani.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess they share the, the same goal is reduce the price. That the goal objective are shared, but I don't think they share any, means really to achieve it.
One of the things Mamdani's talked about for New York, he's going to control rents. He is going to have and Mike, that's just what that's mad. But yet he did. That's his promise. He's going to make it affordable. Because I want to talk to you about affordability because we'll come back to affordability in a minute. But in the first, just answer. So, what do you think about this rent control that he's going to impose? What do you think of that?
That will be totally disastrous. A couple things. One, the price is determined by supply and demand. If you don't have a good supply, more supply, how can you drop that, right?
Yes.
I had one friend who runs many apartments. He was telling him a story. He says, "Damage. Why? If he controls the rent, you guess what? Who will suffer the most? The tenants. Why? Because the landlord will no longer have any incentive to renovate their apartment, have no money to renovate. And then the tenants were living in the deteriorating that kind of condition, in miserable housing condition. They're afraid of move out. If they moved out, other places already have a higher price, right? Because you control the rent. In this place, you cannot raise, but other place, if you move, you have to go to other more expensive ones, because if you get into the more expensive ones, they cannot raise again. So the others will have to have a high, but the one you currently have, is keep low. So end of the day, the poor working people suffer the most. And then many buildings will be, will really deteriorate because of lack of repairs, proper repairs. And so the supply, if no supply, and then the housing will not drop price.
Well, I listened to Charlie Kirk he was talking to Tucker Carlson back in about June or July, obviously prior to his death. And Charlie Kirk, Mike, he was sort of saying that affordability is an issue for young people. It is a genuine issue. And I think we probably would all agree with that. But one way to deal with affordability, and it applies in places like London as well, is if you allow vast amounts of migration in, then you're back to supply and demand. There's only so many accommodations. And if you have, Mamdani wants New York to be like, what, a sanctuary city? So is that not creating the problem that he's complaining about?
You are exactly right. Absolutely. Think about New York City, right? Under Biden administration, and that time, New York City, you get, paying the illegal immigrants to stay in the 4-star, 5-star hotels, give them every day $100 stipend to living expenses, right? So, you are exactly right. They create for more demand. So the sanctuary city, open border policy actually caused the affordability issue.
Yes.
You are exactly right.
Yeah, that's right. Because I can remember being in New York some years ago, and I remember staying with my wife in the Roosevelt Hotel, and it was a very nice hotel, the Roosevelt. And then I saw, Mike, and during the Biden years, it was for migrants were being put up in this historical New York hotel. And you think, this is insane. And I mean, that was Bidenomics, I suppose. But Mamdani is even worse than Biden, I think. What do you feel in terms of his just inability to understand basic stuff?
I will have a slightly different view. In terms of ideology, he's worse than Biden.
Yeah.
But maybe he at least he's alert, right? Biden is already
he's alive. Yeah, he is alive. I'll give you that. Yeah, Biden wasn't. But
I really hope he really can later he run into the stone wall, because his policy will make him run into the stone wall, because it will lead to failure. And then he may, I really hope he can change a little bit, right? But one thing really worrying me the most is really his security policy, right? He was supporting defunding police, right?
yes,
That was disastrous. And my daughter, she lives in New York right now. And I worry about her safety every day, because all the policies defunding police, condone the homeless, condone the mental illness people, right? They have no discipline to really put the law and order back in New York City. So that is another major concern I have, So his policy, totally are disastrous. Another thing he mentioned, he want to eliminate the gifted program in New York City. Think about that. Currently, America is face fierce competition from China, many other countries in terms of producing talented, young people. Gifted program is the one who really utilize each person's individual's talents to enable them to learn more, right? To achieve more, and then to give, to really contribute to society more. But he totally adopts the so-called racial equity work policy, try to limit the young, talented young people's education, opportunity. That is totally against common sense. So that will be another disaster, basically.
Do you think, though, is Mamdani, is he the future of the Democrats in the States? What do you think?
Unfortunately, he is the future of radical Democrats. I tell you, in 2024, when I saw the landslide victory of President Trump, I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was saying, the radical left, pretty much they are going down, began to on decline. But you guess what? Election of Mamdani really caught me in surprise, because, in California, in New York, in many places, radical left already tried their woke culture, tried their critical race theory, tried their radical LGBT theory, and all failed miserably. And really, New York election really caught me in surprise. He won that kind of margin, right? Really caught me in surprise.
Yeah, because actually that's another thing. He has also said that when it comes to New York, he's going to continue to allow trans surgery on young kids. So, I mean, this is really radical stuff, Mike. It really is coming from Mamdani. But when you look at how AOC and others have rallied behind him, it worries me that in 2028, we could see others like him gain power. Do you think that's possible?
That is possible. Maybe person, not himself, person like him maybe win the primary, right? Yeah. So from the Democrat side. But one thing I want to point out, okay? Today's Democratic Party is really a political machine, have any principle.
Yeah.
Like Mamdani, suppose he is Muslim. Muslim is against LGBTs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But how, a Democratic Party can have the followers from both Muslim and also from the LGBT group, right?
Yeah.
Which means they do not have a principle. They only care about the vote, care about the power, right?
That's right.
So, in this regard, Mamdani, actually, he's politically driven. He's more like a power greedy. He is really manipulative, right? He just want to get the radical left vote. He does not really have his principle, but based on his support of LGBT, radical policy, from my side, I think, people, some individual may have different sexual orientation. That will be very small percentage in human population, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have like a partnership, you want to get equal rights, get something, to me is okay.
Yeah.
But you should not promote, advocate your lifestyle towards young teenagers, the toddlers. That's not right.
Yeah.
I think we treat everybody equally. But to advocate that kind of radical, ideology, even encourage teenagers to have surgery, changes their gender, that is not
Evil.
moral. Is not ethical.
No, it's absolutely not. But then another thing that Mamdani was very big on was the whole the Palestine issue, the Gaza issue, and that was successfully exploited, I think, as well. How did you sort of interpret that when it came to? It seemed to be very popular with young radicals in New York, Gaza.
Yeah, that's another great example of how the like critical race theory, how the Marxist influence, really, on the young people, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the murder, look at the violence, right? Muslim world, they kill each other more than many times. The two factions of Muslims kill each other more than what Israel killed Muslims.
Yeah.
Hundreds of times, right?
Yeah.
But nobody cares about that. The media, right? The left media never criticize that, rarely criticize that.
No.
And also when Muslims kill the Christians, they rarely criticize that, right?
Yeah.
But according to their political, that kind of ideology, they label the Muslim as oppressed, label Jews as oppressors. So using this lens, so if Jews have even the self-defense, they claim that is kind of like immoral. No, it's not true. I personally visited Israel. I knew, in the state of Israel, the Jews and Arabs, also Muslims, they live in peace.
They do.
And during the war in I visited one hospital. Actually, the Israel doctors was helping the injured people from Syria, to help them to crack, doing cosmetic surgery, to help them restore their life, right? I personally met Arab director of a hospital. They live in peace in Israel. Yeah. So I knew from my personal experience, really the liberal, radical left media, really they are telling the lies. They really, that is how they instigate so many violence against Israel and against Jews in America.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue because just as it was weaponized by Mamdani in New York, it's also been weaponized here in the UK as well, Mike. It's been, again, by the radical left. They latch onto this. And it does amuse me because they latch onto the Palestinian cause and they latch onto the LGBTQ plus cause, and they're completely incompatible, but it doesn't matter. And back to the Democrats just want to hoover up votes. All they care about is power. It's clear to me that you're right, Mike, in what you said. They have no principles, the Democrats, no principles. But how do Republicans cope with this then?
You mean Republican?
Yeah, how does Republicans cope with this new form of democratic socialism, aka communism?
I think from what I'm reading from X and other sources, Republicans are very, like I think outspoken against Mamdani already, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. I'm one of them. I published an op-ed at Blaze, right,
Yeah.
criticizing his
Yeah.
policies, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, I think Republican, especially President Trump, already began to pay attention to the inflation issue,
Yeah.
affordability issue.
All that. Yeah.
I want to give the fair, fair truth about this. Actually, the affordability issue was not caused by President Trump; was caused by Joe Biden. The inflation, right?
Yep.
President Trump already lowered the groceries, especially the energy price.
Yes, energy. Yeah. When
But due to the tariff and some individual grocery was unable to drop significantly, but like egg price already dropped significantly. But some import fruits from South America, because of tariff that was unable to drop as fast. But President Trump already have executive order, I believe, has taken action to waive many fruits imports, food imports from South America, so that I believe in a few months or we will see significant impact on that. But one thing I also want to blame is really the Fed, really Federal, Reserve, right? They keep the interest rate so high for so long. When Biden was rising the price, basic inflation was rising under Biden administration, he took action too slow. End of the day, was unable to control that. But right now, he is too slow again. In this regard, I'm totally with President Trump. So we need the Fed to have timely policy to solve the affordability issue, because many Americans are paying high mortgage. If they pay more in the mortgage, they will have less for the grocery.
That's right. No, you're right, Mike. And this is, I think this is something that Charlie Kirk, because he spoke to young people so much, he totally understood that affordability was key. And I think President Trump understands affordability is key. I'm not sure everyone else in the Republican Party necessarily gets that, but they should do now, because but one way you could deal with affordability that I'd like to see, I don't know what you think, is, as I say, part of it is vast numbers of migrants that shouldn't be in the US. I'd like, if there was greater mass deportation, would that not help?
Yeah, absolutely, we should do that. But the problem in America is we have so-called sanctuary city, right?
Yeah.
If Democrats party, if their leaders are really patriotic, they should support President Trump's policy to deport the criminals first, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And the people rely on welfare, right? They should do this first. But you guess what? Because they have all kinds of resistance. So President Trump was unable to really root out so many criminals in the blue cities, blue states, like in California, in Boston, many places, right? So unfortunately, I want to tell you, when I came to America at that time, 10 years, almost 7-8 years after I came to America, under President Clinton, that time the Democrat Party was moderate. Bill Clinton was against illegal immigrants.
That's right. Yeah.
He worked with the Republican Party, did the welfare reform, did also also strengthen the law against the violence, right? He was against the violence, the criminals, right?
Yeah.
So the welfare. But today, the Democratic Party already become radical. Many things Bill Clinton supported at that time, like welfare reform, like the against crime, and also many also open like a policy, immigration policies, right? Many things today Democrats already against that.
Yeah.
So that made this makes President Trump's job more difficult, because if the leaders of the Democrat Party are truly patriotic, they should work with President Trump to deport all the criminal first, also the people taking advantage, use our welfare, right? So the money is the limited resources. We only have money to either support American citizens or support illegals, right? We have to support American citizens first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sanctuary cities are a real problem, Mike. I understand that. And the fact that New York is a sanctuary city, and that in itself tells us that my prediction is the next couple of years could be very difficult for New Yorkers, because if Mamdani does half of what he says, it's going to be difficult, Mike. Crime, economy, everything's going to get worse, not better.
Absolutely, that's what I worry about. The most is really like capital city, right? Think about that. Like in terms of all the financial exchange, a lot of things, many investment banking, many industries really drive New York City's economic prosperity.
Yeah.
If like the public safety decline, if all kinds of restrictive socialist policy, communist policy being implemented in New York City, many banks will leave New York City. If we have no revenue income generating corporations in New York City, New York City will be in decline.
Yeah. Can I ask you, how do you think China? What does China think of the likes of Mamdani getting into power in New York? What do you think the Chinese government view in that is?
I think they will be laughing at America. I want to tell you, you know what? Actually, a few years ago, I wrote an op-ed at a national review and compare the funding, American funding versus communist funding, right? Actually, communist funding is really promoting the planned economy, communist policies, right? And many disasters. You know what? Many people don't know China achieved economic prosperity in recent decades simply because Deng Xiaoping adopted capitalist, right, free market system to a certain degree, to a large degree, not 100% yet, right? Actually, China benefited from learning, the technology from the West, right? Right now, China, because the people over there, Chinese people are very hardworking, pro-education, Confucian value in influence. They already have innovation ability. They are no longer copycat. But what I'm trying to say is many failing policy China already abandoned. Today, the Democratic Party in America is still promoting that. What a joke,
Yeah. Which means, actually, if you think about it, that communist China will be a beneficiary of the implementation of these failed policies in the United States. They win as a consequence of what the Democrats. Is that an accident or is that deliberate?
I want to be fair, right? Actually, the cause of the communist influence is not really primarily from China. It's really from during the World War II, the so-called Frankfurt School, the scholars, right? Herbert Marcuse and many others. They used to be called like a study group of Marxists, right? But during World War II, they escaped into America. University of Columbia totally welcomed them. So
Yeah.
over the last about 80 years or so,
Yeah.
they began to really indoctrinate, the whole generation of Americans from media, from college professors. So the main cause of the communists or Marxists in America is not from China. It's really caused by the Franklin School, right?
Yeah.
China, I want to say both China and America are the victim of Karl Marx theory.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that, and I think you're right. I think the problem is, Mike, that an awful lot of university professors, people very eminent in the academic field, they have been completely captured by the Frankfurt School. They're completely captured by it, and they're the ones that are then educating the young people. So I see the problem as a big part of the problem is the professors.
Exactly. You are exactly right. Many also, uh, the so-called neo-Marxism, right? Like Herbert Marcuse, this kind of people, they already did a lot of transformation of Marxist theory. Initially, was focused on economic, class struggle. They changed it to the racial struggle. They no longer use the workers as their like soldiers, right? Like foot soldiers. They use like black, Hispanic, use LGBTs, use other anybody against anybody are not happy or are not really doing very well in capitalist society. They try to utilize it, right? They just want to get power, right? They try to indoctrinate them to convert them to their soldiers, right? Foot soldiers. And they also, recently I read one. Basically, I read one audio. I heard one audio book talk about, Herbert Marcuse. He had one comment. He was saying, free speech in America need to be changed. If dominate all like some kind of if like for example the capitalist or conservative voice is dominate, so in that situation you need to have censorship to really reduce really the dominant voice.
Yeah.
Think about that. He's promoting something totally against founding father. America's founding
Yeah.
fathers was wisdom. You
Yeah.
guess what? His his kind of this kind of propaganda was well received by the Democratic Party. That's the reason they had the cancel culture. They had the censorship, right?
Yeah.
So that example shows how dangerous this kind of Marxist theory, that influence penetrate America.
Yeah. And tell me, Mike, do you think that when Elon Musk got his hands on Twitter/X, do you feel that that helped restore a little bit of free speech so that conservative opinions can be heard more so than they were under the Jack Dorsey era of Twitter?
I want to tell you, it's not only a little bit, it's a major milestone. I
Hmm.
actually wrote op-ed at the daily called praising, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
You know what? Many people, Americans, unfortunately, young people, they were indoctrinated by the like a Marxist, this kind of theory. But people like me, like Elon Musk, right? We grew up in a different country. We
Yeah.
knew how bad the censorship is, how bad this kind of like cancel culture is.
Yeah.
So that's the why so many immigrants like me, like Elon Musk, become outspoken against radical left, against Karl Marx theory.
Yeah, and it is good that there are platforms like X that you can talk about, that you can speak, be outspoken, and say what you want. I think that is important because back in 2022 when we spoke, obviously that was mid Biden, and there was there was massive cancel culture everywhere in 2022.
Absolutely, my book actually covered, recorded many, and also I learned more in recently, reading other conservative books.
Yeah.
I also want to comment in UK. I heard over 2,000 people being like censored, being punished somehow because of the language, right? Or what is their language? That's not acceptable. You know, like language thoughts. I view that we need to give them a free market, right? Let them compete. Nobody should censor, say, okay, this is like true or not true. This is,
Yeah.
as long as it's lawful. If say somebody constant lying, and people will look at just like a company selling the fake product, right? And
Yeah.
they will lose reputation. It's really we need a lot of like different thoughts, different ideas to compete. End of the day, the good ideas will always win.
Prevail. Yeah. That's
One thing I want to point out to your audience is China had a very big lesson on that. Between 1958 to around
mm,
Chairman Mao at that time, he was unhappy against outspoken intellectuals. That time were pretty much only high school graduates in China. They called it intellectuals.
yeah.
So he launched called the anti-rightist campaign. Thousands, outspoken intellectuals into the concentration camp to do the
Yeah.
hard labor. You know what? That the people suffer is only number two damage. Number one damage was he silenced the opposition, right? Even
Yeah.
constructive criticism no longer exists in China after that. You know what? 3 years later, he launched the Great Leap Forward campaign, and then he basically that was economic disaster. He had every parents working the camel do not do the farming, doing the try to produce the steel, but most of them produce raw iron, not steel, right? Useless steel, basically stuff,
Yeah.
and then cause a famine. Over 30 million people, Chinese people, starved to death.
Yeah.
That was the biggest disaster in communist, like all the like biggest disaster of communist disaster in the whole world. So
Yeah.
that is lesson learned. If you silence opposition, if you use censorship, that is a very dramatic example. I hope all of your audience can remember this lesson. This is a painful lesson. Over 13 million people died.
Yeah, no, and this is where, unfortunately, history like that, Mike, should be taught more prominently so people understand exactly what the consequences of that were. I completely agree with you. I mean, I think the thing that for me is that, I mean, you lived through it. You lived through what happened. You saw what happened in China. You're in the United States, and you can see with the likes of Mamdani that if there were more, if that attitude grows, America's going to have great troubles ahead. And as a migrant who's come to the US, made a great life, contributed to the US, I think your perspective is very important. It's one that that's why I wanted to get you on. I wanted people to get your perspective because you've seen both sides and you know it doesn't work. And the fact that so many naive New Yorkers think that it can work amazes me. I also think you're right. The Democrats don't have principles. They don't care. They just want power. It seems to me that's what Gavin Newsom's after in California. Obviously, he doesn't want to have any voter integrity, so anyone can vote. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, that's exactly. You know what? He just look at example. He did not care about the homeless. Until Xi Jinping visited San Francisco, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was everything try to for political reason. He does not really care about the life of Californians, right?
yeah,
One thing actually, I mentioned in a different interview, Previously, California already have budget surplus, but he squandered that, giving away to the illegal immigrants. So right now they're running huge deficits, right? So in the past, I want to say everything communist touches always led to the murder and also poverty. But
Yeah.
today, everything radical left touches always always lead to censorship, lead to the authoritarian, lead to the also poverties,
Yeah.
all kinds of radical policies,
Yeah, I often say, Mike, if socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. If they did, but they don't understand economics, and that's the truth of it. Listen, Mike, we've reached the end of our allocated time. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you again. Can I just advise everyone, please make sure you give Mike a follow. Here he is, and check out his various content that he's putting out. As I say, I think he is an important voice in the debate because he's seen how it really works. And these are the sort of Mike's the sort of person we should. Yeah, Chinese Americans for the Constitution. Yeah, this is all good stuff. Which is why not all migration is bad. It's not. There's good migrants and there's bad migration, and that's what we have to balance. Mike, thank you so much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it. It's been great to see you again, and thanks for being with the audience tonight.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Everyone, thanks very much for being here on this one tonight. All the normal stuff returns tomorrow, so I'll see you then. In the meantime, from Mike and myself, it's good night.